Puppetry is a genre of theatre that has its origins dating back thousands of years. There are countless claims to the origin of puppetry from different parts of the world. The earliest references of puppetry were found in various texts from ancient Greece, Egypt, India, and China. One of the most interesting stories about the origin of puppetry comes from China. When Emperor Wu of the Han Dynasty was ruling China, one of his favourite concubines named Lady Li died of an illness. Heartbroken at her loss, he became deeply depressed and thought of stepping down from his reign. One day, a minister happened to see some children playing with dolls. To him, the shadow of these dolls appeared to be very strong and bright on the floor. Inspired by this scene, the minister made a cotton puppet and painted it to look like Lady Li. At night, he staged a performance for his emperor by projecting the puppet's shadow onto a thin curtain. The Chinese emperor was delighted to see the resemblance of his beloved Lady Li in the curtain fabric. The emperor gradually came out of his depression, and his reign lasted for 54 years. Many historians and artists believe that the shadow performance put on by the minister that night led to the creation of one of the earliest animated techniques in the world. This incident marks the beginning of Piyingxi, or the Chinese shadow puppetry. When it comes to India, references of puppetry were found in the Tamil classic Silabbadikaram, written around 200 BC by the Jain poet Ilango Adigal. It was almost around the same time that the oldest Indian work on performance arts, entitled Natya Shastra, was authored. In the book, the director of any performance was termed as Sutradhar, meaning the holder of strings. This may be an indication that the word Sutradhar might have found its place in theatre terminology long before the book was written. According to many scholars, puppetry, therefore, is believed to have originated in India more than 500 years before Christ. In ancient Greece, the practice of puppetry had been recorded in the works of historians like Herodotus and Xenophon. These references of 500 BC are considered as the oldest written records of puppetry. And there is evidence that puppets were used in Egypt as early as 2000 BC, when string-operated figures of wood were manipulated to perform the action of kneading bread. Puppetry acted as a unique storytelling art form that narrated politics, religion, and satire, amongst other topics. The types of stories told with puppetry vary from country to country. In China, shadow plays are usually based upon Chinese legends and folk tales. In Indonesia, they tend to be based upon religious stories of good versus evil. Turkish shadow plays, on the other hand, are more light-hearted. They often use humour to tell stories based upon events of everyday life. Like traditional theatre, themes for the Indian puppet theatres were mostly based on epics and legends. As the years passed, it was in the 20th century that puppet making was introduced into schools as a craft activity. Puppetry is a unique performing art that has a history dating back 4,000 years. Its evolution is worth researching and recording in contemporary times of 2020, for an important reason. Even though puppetry in its creative expressions and innovations was evolving as an art form in many South Asian countries, including India and China, the adaptation of technology in puppetry was spearheaded from the West.
I know there is a God.
The advances in the science and technology after the Second World War changed the politics, the economy, and the way people interacted with one another. In the art scene, new forms of puppetry have also developed since then. It was in 1955 the famous American puppeteer Jim Henson invented the first comic puppet character, which marked the beginning of the Muppets. They were specially designed hand puppets made of foam that could be controlled by strings, hands and rods, and were majorly featured in television programs and series. Kermit the Frog is one of the most famous Muppet characters created and originally performed by Jim Henson.
Ready, Kermit?
Yeah, just don't push me hard.
What?
Push me hard.
Okay.
1960s saw the rise of supermarionation. British television producer Gerry Anderson created electronic marionettes, or string puppets, with a movable lower lip by means of a solenoid fitted inside the puppet's head or chest. This innovation helped in the better controlling of the facial features of a puppet. Puppet TV series and feature films of the 1960s showcased a variety of Mr. Anderson's electronic puppets. TV series like Four Feather Falls, Supercar and Fireball XL5 are some of the great examples. However, one of the most significant innovations in the art of puppetry and filmmaking happened when Walt Disney used robotics technology and computers to create lifelike, moving creatures. This combination of robotics and puppetry is called animatronics. The 1964 film Mary Poppins, produced by Disney, integrated puppetry, anatomy, and mechatronics in filmmaking for the first time in history by featuring an animatronic bird. Since then, movies like Jaws and E.T. the Extraterrestrial relied heavily on animatronics.
Where's the goat?
Moving forward, a combination of computer-generated imagery in conjunction with life-sized animatronic dinosaurs was seen in the 1993 film Jurassic Park.
Boy, do I hate being right all the time.
Outside the film industry, Disneyland also showcased an animatronic figure of the former American president, Abraham Lincoln, that was built for the 1964 World's Fair. An upgraded version of the figure is still at Disneyland to this day. When it comes to digital puppetry, a notable contribution in modern times was from a UK-based creative technology company called Dotlib. It used motion tracking with Kinect, a motion-sensing input device produced by Microsoft, to control the movements of a digital puppet. In many ways, the mechanical possibilities evidently defined the puppet behaviour and emotion. However, a review of all of the developments that have happened in the art of puppetry brings to light the fact that the major innovations were confined only to the film industry. India has a very long tradition of puppetry. The country has the richest variety of types and styles of shadow puppets. However, looking at the larger picture, only 18 to 20 Indian puppet traditions survive today. In the middle of the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, two young innovators of contemporary times, functioning in entirely two different domains, were working to materialize an idea that would revolutionize the 4,000-year-old performing art, puppetry. Mr. Rahul Balachandran is the CEO of India's fast-growing robotic technology company and research centre, INKER Robotics. During this time, he has been carefully observing the progress being made by the engineers, whom he handpicked from INKER's R&D department and regrouped them exclusively for his very own puppet automation project. First of its kind in the history of puppetry, for a reason. It is a fact that Mr. Rahul is not particularly passionate about puppetry, which he obviously agrees to, but he is a visionary technocrat who is very keenly committed to the meaningful technology projects that add value to the lives of people from all walks of life. The concept behind Gramam 4.0, one of the ongoing projects of his robotic company, reflects his vision. The program ensures that the robotic engineers at INKER Robotics visit various schools and communities across rural India to help the little children see and experience humanoid robots, drones, and so on in real life. He wanted the access to technology for everyone in the society he lives in. However, the traditional puppetry earned his attention a little later. It was in the year 2016 he first conveyed the idea of automating puppets to Mr. Sajeesh Pulava, hailing from the Palakkad district of Kerala. Pulava is the honourable title given to a scholar and performer who has extensive knowledge of Tholpavakoothu, the shadow puppetry of Kerala. Historically, intellectually and culturally, Mr. Sajeesh comes in the 8th generation of traditional puppeteers who have mastered the art of shadow puppetry. In Kerala, Tholpavakoothu is preserved as a family tradition by the Pulavas. Kamba Ramayana is a renowned Tamil epic, the selected verses of which form the content for the shadow puppetry in Kerala. Mr. Lakshmana Pulava, father of Mr. Sajeesh Pulava, is one of the very few master puppeteers alive today who have memorized 2,100 of the 12,100 slogans in Kamba Ramayana. He has taken shadow puppetry to different parts of India and the world, including Sweden, Germany, and Greece. The puppet theatre in the contemporary world faces great difficulties and great opportunities. In his boyhood days, Mr. Sajeesh Pulava came across traditional puppeteers offering their shows with no takers in small towns of India. He was disappointed to experience the pain of traditional puppeteers, even though his family was blessed and well committed to pass on Tholpavakoothu to the next generation. However, his young mind back then had limited understanding of the responsibility that was bestowed upon him.
എൻ്റെ മകൻ സജീഷ് ബിടെക് പഠിച്ച ശേഷം കുറച്ച് 1-2 വർഷം വേറെ ജോലിക്കായിട്ട് പോവുകയുണ്ടായി. ആ സമയത്ത് എനിക്ക് കുറച്ച് വിഷമമുണ്ടായി. എന്നിരുന്നാലും സജീഷ് പിന്നീട് ആ ജോലി വേണ്ടാന്ന് വെച്ചിട്ട് എന്നോടൊപ്പം എപ്പോഴും സഹായിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അതിൽ വലിയ സന്തോഷമുണ്ട്.
Sajeesh Pulava's passion for puppetry stayed in hibernation mode when he was working for a couple of corporate companies in Bangalore for a few years. He later came back to Kerala for a reason. A long-lost sense of purpose was calling him back. His family always wanted to innovate the content and the format of shadow puppetry, but his call was something higher.
വളരെ പഠിക്കാൻ ആളില്ലാതെ കണ്ടുള്ളതായ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുണ്ട്. ഇതൊരു 3 മാസത്തെ പരിപാടിയാണ് ഉണ്ടാവുന്നത്. കാര്യമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു ജീവിതം ഈ കൂത്ത് പഠിച്ചിട്ടുള്ളവർക്ക് കിട്ടണില്ല. അമ്പലങ്ങളിൽ നിന്ന് കമ്മിറ്റിക്കാർ മുഖേനയായിട്ട് തരുന്നതായ ഈ പ്രതിഫലം വളരെ കുറവാണ്. അതുകൊണ്ട് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ജീവിതം 1 വർഷത്തെ ജീവിതം പോവില്ല. അതുകൊണ്ട് കുട്ടികളാരും തന്നെ ഇതിൽ പിൻഗാമികളായിട്ട് ഉണ്ടാവണില്ല.
എല്ലാ ഭാഗത്ത് 2 ആളെങ്കിലും ഇല്ലാതെ കൂത്ത് നടക്കില്ല. പറയാൻ 2 ആള് മസ്റ്റാണ്. 2 ആള്. പിന്നെ പാവ കളിക്കണമെങ്കിൽ അത് യുദ്ധസമയത്താണെങ്കിൽ 8-10 ആള് വേണം. ഈ 10 ആൾക്കുള്ള ഭാഗ ക്ഷേത്രത്തിന് കിട്ടൂല. എങ്ങനെ കൂത്ത് നടക്കും? 10 ആളെന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ചുരുങ്ങിയത് 800 രൂപ വീതം കൂട്ടിയ 8000 രൂപ കിട്ടണ്ട. കിട്ടില്ല. 2000 രൂപ തരും. ചോദിച്ചു നോക്കൂ. അതായത് അന്ന് ദാരിദ്ര്യത്തിൻ്റെ കാലമാണ്. ഈ ദാരിദ്ര്യത്തിൻ്റെ കാലത്ത് ഒരു നേരത്തെ ചോറിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ് ആ കാലത്ത് യഥാർത്ഥത്തിൽ ഈ പാവക്കൂത്ത് കലാകാരന്മാർ ഇത്രയധികം പഠിച്ചുണ്ടാക്കിയത്. കാരണം സാധാരണക്കാരൻ്റെ വീട്ടിൽ ഒരു നേരത്തെ കഞ്ഞിവെപ്പും കൂടി ഇല്ലാത്ത കാലത്ത് വലിയ വലിയ ജന്മികളുടെ വീടുകളിലും മനകളിലായിരുന്നു ഈ തോൽപ്പാവക്കൂത്ത് കലാകാരന്മാർക്ക് സദ്യ നടത്തിയിരുന്നത്. പിന്നെ ഇതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഞങ്ങൾക്കൊരു പാവയുണ്ടാക്കണം. ഗതകാലത്ത് ഞങ്ങൾക്ക് മാനിൻ്റെ തോല് കിട്ടിയിരുന്നു. ഇപ്പോൾ കിട്ടില്ല. വേറെ ഏതെങ്കിലും തോല് വെച്ച് നടത്തി ഉണ്ടാക്കണമെങ്കിൽ തന്നെ ഒരു പാവയ്ക്ക് തന്നെ ഏകദേശം അതിൻ്റെ കോസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ വന്നിട്ട് 5000-6000 രൂപ വരും. 100-120 പാവ ഉണ്ടാകണമെങ്കിൽ തന്നെ ഒരു തോൽപ്പാവക്കൂത്ത് കലാകാരൻ വീട് വെക്കേണ്ട അവസ്ഥയാണ് വരുന്നത്.
ഇപ്പോൾ എൻ്റെ സ്നേഹിതൻ സദാനന്ദ പുലവർ നിർബന്ധിച്ചിട്ട് ഒരു 3-4 പേരെ ഇങ്ങനെ പഠിപ്പിച്ച് വരുന്നുണ്ട്. ഞങ്ങളുടെ പിൻഗാമികളായിട്ട് ആരെങ്കിലും ഒരാൾ ഉണ്ടാവണ്ടേ ഇതിനെ. ആ ഈശനുണ്ട് ചൊല്ലാനുണ്ട് പരമേശ്വര സ്വാമിയെ ഞാൻ എപ്പോഴും ഭജിച്ചു വരക്കൂടുന്നതാണ് ഒരുവനുമാകും.
देश आज एक महत्वपूर्ण निर्णय करने जा रहा है. आज रात 12 बजे से पूरे देश में संपूर्ण लॉकडाउन होने जा रहा है. आपके जीवन को बचाना, आपके परिवार को बचाना.
As the severe lockdown restrictions continued to be imposed in India because of the 2020 pandemic, factories and workplaces began to shut down. Employee layoff appeared to be a common occurrence. Migrants in different parts of the country struggled to get back home.
Now, he said that every district, every lane, every village will be under lockdown. And if you can't handle these 21 days...
The fate of artists in creative spaces weren't any different. So is the fate of puppeteers. It was in such a scenario that Sajeesh Pulava recalled his friend's idea of puppet automation. This is when Rahul Balachandran and INKER Robotics came into the picture. Rahul was thrilled to the core at the event of Sajeesh's return. He knew that he was going to revolutionize puppetry by introducing puppet automation. He was aware that in all of the innovations that have happened in puppetry, the original nature of the art form was compromised, either remodeled or digitalized, and sometimes recreated. The reason for his excitement was the fact that in his automation, Tholpavakoothu retains its original form. Nothing is being replaced. Bright minds at INKER Robotics were called for. A series of online and offline meetings were held. Sajeesh Pulava wished to have the golden deer part of the Kamba Ramayana for the automation project. In the chapter, Marichan, the uncle of Ravana, is disguised as a golden deer to woo Rama and Lakshmana out of the way, so that Ravana can capture Sita. Sajeesh's father, Lakshmana Pulava, who has 45 years of experience in Tholpavakoothu, was curious to see how perfectly the shadow puppets would perform when machines control the play. Repeated real-time testing of the puppet movements of Rama, Lakshmana and the golden deer were carried out. The mechanical movements of the characters, especially the golden deers, weren't as agile as when an experienced puppeteer runs the show. Neither Rahul Balachandran nor Sajeesh Pulava appeared fine seeing the initial results of puppet automation. The motors and controllers used to automate the puppets were changed multiple times to achieve the ease of mobility, as in the original shadow puppet videos that Sajeesh Pulava showed to Rahul and his team. In the long pursuit of perfection, the faces of engineers looked anxious. But one day, Rahul Balachandran smiled, Sajeesh Pulava too. After days of relentless work at INKER's R&D lab, engineers at INKER Robotics with their high-end coding succeeded in perfecting the automation of all 3 characters. By the time Sajeesh Pulava secured the opportunity to showcase the automated shadow puppets at the Palikad Mani Ayir Memorial Museum in Kerala, Rahul Balachandran, the CEO of INKER Robotics, started his pursuit for the next meaningful innovation. All the innovations the world has seen in bygone times in the art of puppetry have faced compromises in its original form. The innovative puppet automation project of INKER Robotics, completed amid a pandemic, deserves a greater mention in the art scene for its novelty and commitment to the authenticity of the art form. INKER's puppet automation is expected to help the younger generation to come forward, code, and conduct automated puppet performances around the globe. The 4,000-year-old art form will go a long way ahead with this innovation. Rahul Balachandran knew that puppeteers would connect with INKER Robotics in the times to come, and his team would take care of automating puppet performances for them all. And Sajeesh Pulava, the traditional puppeteer who understands the language of innovation and the art of puppetry, would resume his journey to take it to farther lands.